coming home, coming home, never more to roam. Open wide thy arms of love, Lord, I'm coming home.
One Sunday afternoon, about 2 o'clock, a westbound train pulled out from Baltimore, Maryland. It was heading towards a small mining town in West Virginia. And on this train, there was a young man who was trying to find a seat. Finally, he sat down beside of an old gray-haired minister who was reading the Bible. And on their journey, the old minister kept looking across his shoulder at the young man. And once in a while, he'd see a tear in the young man's eyes. And finally he said, "Son, I see that you're troubled about something. Perhaps I can be of some help. You see, I'm a minister, and sometimes it helps to talk about things." The young man burst into tears, and he said, "Sir, I'm so glad that you asked me about this, because I just can't keep it bottled up inside of me any longer. You see, sir, 3 years ago today, I was living at home with Mom and Dad. They were good Christians, Mom and Dad. They carried me to church every time the church doors opened, tried the very best with everything that they knew how to raise me into a life of Christianity. And I started running around with a bunch of mean boys that was in our neighborhood. Started coming in all hours of the night, using all kinds of filthy language, drinking, taking dope, just about anything that you could think of that was mean. I was in that category. This went on for months. One night I came home and my old dad was waiting up for me. It was very late. I was drinking very heavy. Dad and I got into a terrible argument. One word led to another, and I finally hit my dad. I'll never forget the look on his face. He said, "Son, if this is the very best that you can live, I'd rather you just leave us alone. Pack your clothes and leave home and let us live our lives in peace." So early the next morning, I packed my clothes and I left. And I didn't have anywhere to go, so I just went in one direction. And I wound up in a city called Baltimore in the state of Maryland. I got a job there, and in about 6 months, I was married to a young girl. She was a young Christian girl and went to church quite often. One weekend, they were having revival there at the church where my wife attended, and my wife persuaded me to go to church with her there on Friday night. And while I was there, God convicted me and saved my soul. I went back home, and I got to thinking how good it would be if I could see Mom and Dad one more time. So I wrote a letter to Mom last weekend, and in this letter I said, "Mom, I'm coming home next Sunday for a visit. Don't know if I'm still welcome, and I wouldn't blame you if I wasn't. But I just wanted you to know that God had saved my soul, and I'm living a new life. And Mom, I want to come home for just a little while. And if I'm forgiven and it's all right, I want you to go out in the front yard and hang a white rag from that old apple tree so I can see it from the train. If I see the white rag, I'll get off the train and I'll come in for just a little while. If I don't see the white rag, I'll just go on." The young man, with tears still rolling down his face, looked again at the old minister, and he said, "Sir, I'd like for you to be my eyes for just a moment, for just around this next curve, is where I left home 3 years ago, and I can't bear the thought to look. I'm going to bow my head and pray, and I want you to tell me if you see the white rag that I wrote my mom about." So the young man bowed his head and began to pray, and as the train went around the curve, the old minister began to wipe the moisture off the window so he could see out clearly. And all at once the old minister himself burst into tears, and he said, "Son, I want you to raise your head. You've just got to see this. I can't describe it to you. You don't have a thing to worry about. There's not just one white rag in that old apple tree, but son, there's a white rag hanging from every limb. And that's not all. There's an old mom and dad out in the front yard. They're waving the biggest bed sheet I ever saw, with the words wrote on it, 'Welcome home, son. Welcome home.'"